Welcome back, everyone. Well, today we're going to see about swapping out this fuel pump and the lines attached to it. So as you saw in one of my previous videos, if you didn't, I can link this one to it, that we had a fuel leak in one of the blue lines up underneath the cab up here, so up in that general direction. And obviously this pump wasn't working last time I tried it, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this one out. I do need to drop the fuel tank because one of the lines that I have to replace attaches right on top to the new sending unit. So I'm going to go ahead and get that taken care of. I'm also putting in a new heating system for the new pump. So let me show you what we got over here. So here's our pump and new bracket down here in the bottom, and there are a few other parts hanging out in there. Here we've got the new fuel lines, so I figured if there was an issue with the blue rubber lines, then I might as well upgrade. These I should be able to terminate pretty easily and go ahead and push lock them onto the existing fittings. We'll see how well that works. I also have all of this stuff over here for the heating system. So here we've got a couple of wraparound electric heaters. These are going to go on the filters. Here I've got heater hose, 3/4 heater hose, and a bunch of fittings and things to go with it. So these are some Y fittings to tie into the existing heater lines. Here I've got some adapters. So these go from the 5/8 that the truck currently has to the 3/4 that I'm going to be using here. Got a bunch of hose clamps. I've got several packages of insulation, because again I'm running these heater lines all the way back to the bed, so I want to make sure that they don't lose too much heat in the process. And I've also got this guy. So this is a diverter valve, which allows me during the summer to shut off heat flow to the pump, and then during the colder months I can flip this over and run heat there all the time. So anyway, little screwdriver came with it. Interesting. Anyway, that should work. I'm going to go ahead and start disassembling things over on the truck, and we'll take you along. Okay, the next thing I want to do is tie into the cooling system. So if you have, like I do, this is a 2005 Dodge Ram 2500 with the 5.9 Cummins. So what I've got over here on the passenger side, my heater lines are back here. So there are two of them. Let's see if I can reach them for you. Right there where my fingers are is where they're located. So there's one coming off the top of the engine, right over here, and one that goes back toward the radiator down on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is cut both of those and put in Y splices. So hopefully I can get this right. But the goal here, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to take one of these, and for the top one I'm going to connect this side to the engine, and then that side is going to go toward the heater core, and this one out here is going to be my new line coming out toward the front where I'm going to place the valve. The other thing to pay attention to is where do you put your valve. So obviously these are pretty far back, so I do want to put the valve someplace where I can get to it pretty easily, and also someplace where it's not going to get caught on something. So I think what I might do, I originally had a manifold heater over here. So you can see the framework down there, the angle iron. That's where I was warming up food when I was driving. I had never really used it very often, so I'm just going to go ahead and take that out while I'm at it. But I might go ahead and just put my my valve right there. Just tie wrap it or something to that framework. It's a nice easy place to find it, and it keeps it pretty close to where everything's located here. So I think I'm going to do that. So first step, need to cut the heater lines. Then I'm going to have to put in adapters because these are 5/8 lines. So one of these goes in next. Then I can put a 3/4 piece coming up to a Y-splice and basically just try to put all that together. So in this case, there's not a whole lot of room back there to work, so I'll show you what this looks like when I'm done. Well, I found out something useful. Although, when I looked it up, it said that the heater lines on this particular engine for this particular year were the 5/8 heater lines. Apparently mine aren't. These are 3/4, or at least they went onto the 3/4 fittings no problem. Which is good, because, let's see if I can show you here. There wasn't a lot of room to work up in here. So here I've got one of my interfaces. So remember, these are Y connectors, so you do want your supply to be on the the upwind side. So what you've got, it's going to look like this. The supply needs to be where my where my arm is, and the two outputs will be where my fingers and thumb are located. So this one up top is coming from the engine, so you wanted to make sure that the Y split going that way, okay? And then the one down below needed to split coming back this direction. But anyway, because these lines were as short as they are, there's not a lot of room to add in all that extra material I was going to put in. So thankfully, they did fit without all the adapters. And up here, what we got, here's my shutoff valve. So back here, this is my, let's see which one is which here. This one is my supply coming out of the engine, and this one is the return going back to the radiator. So obviously the heater's still functional, but this is just now a second circuit. And this is turned off, so I should be able to refill the cooling system without any problems here. Then these two will connect and go back down along the side of the frame rail to supply coolant to the heaters on the fuel system. So over here, remember I was planning on using this Longhorn skid plate mount for attaching this. Now, I don't know if it's just my bed, maybe a standard truck bed isn't as hard to deal with as this one is, but these are designed to mount on a bolt that attaches the bed. So I think with a standard pickup truck bed, that would be easy to reach. So if we look up in here, there's what's left of the original bracket. And up behind that, I don't think you can even see it, is the bolt. Now I can get to that, and I could probably use a 3/4 socket on an impact and try to get that loose. But I don't know, it's surprisingly difficult to get that out of there. So I've made the decision, and it's not ideal, but I'm not going to use this piece. So this was the upper portion of the Longhorn mount. Obviously this is much more heavily gusseted. The one that I've got on there now is not. I'm going to keep this part, so later on down the line, when I swap this truck bed out for a flatbed, I can go ahead and put this part of the mount in. But for now, I'm just going to keep in mind that this is still potentially vulnerable. Don't land on it. And I'll see if I can save this part for later installation. So what I've got, I took down the crossbar. So this part was the horizontal portion of the original mount that comes with the FASS system. So I took this off, and I'm going to go ahead and reuse that upper portion that you can see right there. Now what I found out was, although these are further apart, they are designed for the same hardware. So I can either reuse my existing or use the new hardware and just bolt things together onto that part right there. So what they recommend when you're assembling this mount is to go ahead and assemble all the parts and then attach it to the bed at the end. Now again, I'm going to go this far. So here's their horizontal mount. Now this is really nice. If you look here, it has a nice offset to it. So that way the hardware is nice and hidden back in here. It's not going to touch anything. And then on this section, this is pushed out toward the back a little bit to make it easier to attach. So now what I need to do, you've got a lot of mounting holes and options up in here. I need to take my new pump and set it in here and just see what kind of orientation makes the most sense. Now I do have to keep in mind that since I'm going to be connecting the coolant system to this, where's my pump? Anyway, I'll go find it. Since I'm going to be connecting the coolant system to this, I need to be careful because one of those outputs comes off the back. So I need to make sure that I may have to drill an extra hole in this mount to clear it. Or there's a possibility, if I'm really lucky, that they designed that hole just for that purpose. So we will see. I do have enough room on the side of the truck that I should be able to push this pump up pretty high. The other thing to keep in mind is the filters that came with this are significantly shorter than the ones I currently have. Now I might go ahead and try to mount it high anyway. It might make removal a little easier, and maybe in the future I want to put bigger filters on this truck. But anyway, let's play with it and see what I get. Alright, I just spent some time going through all the parts in the bag here, so I don't know if every one that they sell comes with all this stuff, but mine sure did, and I'm really glad it did. Now, a lot of these push lock fittings for the line that's included, the blue line that was already on the truck, or the roll that you see in there, I'm not going to be reusing, but it's kind of nice to have them anyway. So the other thing that this came with is these. Now the black one is something from another project, but just trying to figure out what size this was. Unfortunately, when looking at their when looking at their instructions, they tell you what part numbers are supposed to be here, but they're not really good about telling you the size. So for people who really know your flare sizes, good for you. I wish I did. What I found was there are two of these little guys, and these already have some Teflon on them. This is a flare on one side and NPT on the other, and they do fit into these coolant ports here. So what you have, there are two coolant ports. There's one on the back here, and there's one over here on the side. These normally come with a kind of a little red plug in them just to keep dirt out. But I'm going to be using these to attach the coolant to. Now obviously this just heats the block right here primarily. But let me see what I can do with this. I did also find out that on this Longhorn mount, this hole right here is ideally placed for that fitting to go through. So they did plan on this, which is great to see. At least they were planning for people to use this in colder climates. So what I'm going to do, I found out that these fittings do have the right flare to attach to the push lock that comes with the kit. So this should be 1/2-inch tubing, so a 1/2-inch push lock on this side. And this one over here, I'm pretty sure is an 8 size flare. I'm not 100% sure about that, and I haven't seen anything marked on here to indicate what size it is. But I'm hoping that's true, because I was able to find this part from another project, and I found where I had purchased it from, so I was able to tell what size this was. Anyway, what I'm going to have to do, I haven't been able to find a direct adapter from an 8 size flare female to a 3/4 barb, like I'm going to need for my heater hose. So what I'm going to have to do is adapt these. So we'll go from 8 female to 10 male, so an expander, and from there you can get to 3/4 flare. 3/4 barb. So what I'll be doing with that, several fittings put together, but that's okay. That'll kind of get the lines out from behind this anyway. So my hope, I'm going to get all of this put together. I've got those on order. They should be here in a couple of days, and I'll be able to put the plumbing together. I know where I'm going to mount the pump now, so let me get this out of the way for you. Okay. So there are a lot of places you can mount this pump, but basically mine is going to go right there, so way up high in the skid plate, which is great because that does mean that at some point in the future I could put longer filters on here, so the full-length filters. Alright, so I think I've got the fittings about right, although apparently I'm missing one. I need to get another. So what we have over here, this one is a 3/8 NPT going to a flare fitting. I've then got a flare adapter and an elbow. This one then adapts it to a 3/4 hose bib, which gives me the ability to attach my heater line. So this one is going to go through the back skid plate and then turn. So I'll take this off right down here. Let's get rid of that. So now I should be able to fit this through the hole in the skid plate, and then I'll put the elbow back on once it's in position. So I'm going to be using some of this yellow Teflon tape. This is rated for fuel, and actually now that I think about it, I don't really need this. I could use any of the Teflon tapes, but this is what I've got, so I'm going to go ahead and put it on there. Anyway, for every other fitting that isn't a flare, I'm going to use this stuff. Make sure you look for the yellow one at the store. That's what we have so far. I'm going to do that, and then my other fitting is on the front over here, and I should have another straight here. So I'm going to go ahead and place this one in this position. Then I need an adapter to step it up to the right size, and once I have that, then I can go ahead and put my flare fitting, my barb fitting right on the front. So this one's going to stick straight out the front like that. But I do want to wait for the time being. I'm going to put that on a little bit later. There we are, attached to our new bracket. So the hardware that comes with the kit, now this comes with the pump, not the skid plate, but you have these aluminum spacers in here, and you've got 3 sort of long 1/4-20 bolts. You can see 2 of them there around the bracket, and the other one is down here underneath. I think you can just see it peeking out there. So obviously this bracket has a lot of different holes in it. You can put the motor in a bunch of different positions, but for me it made the most sense to put it there because, sorry for the noise, that allows my coolant fitting to come out this way. Now if you weren't going to be using the coolant system to try to heat the fuel, then you wouldn't have to be as specific about where this sits. But obviously, like I said, the filters on this pump are a little bit on the shorter side. So I could put some longer filters on in the future if I want to, but for now, this will do nicely. So everything's bolted together. Next step, there are going to be 4 bolts that hold that bracket onto the existing one on the truck, and then the pump will be structurally sound. So we've got our plug right here. That one's going to connect to the harness that's already on there. I just need to make sure I connect it to the right harness. Then I do need to replace the fuel lines still, so that's going to be my next step. Take off the old ones, put on the new ones. The good news is my lengths are pretty good, so I should be able to just take off the old ones, cut the new lines to length, and then put the fittings in and reattach everything. This should be relatively quick. Famous last words. Alright, so here's the supply line to the engine. This is the one that I took off the old pump. Obviously this is the same blue line that comes with these. You can see over here in the box I've got a new roll of the stuff. So I'm going to take a look at the other line that I've got, see how easy it would be to go ahead and put that in. I have decided for the lines that are going to and from the tank, I'm just going to leave them alone for now. Again, I'm trying to get the truck on the road, and yeah, they need to be replaced, but for now I think they'll do the job. And it looks like I will have to drop that fuel tank. So I can reach them up on top, but I can't get to them well enough to tighten them down properly. So I think we're going to be stuck with what I got here, unless I take the exhaust off or something like that, which I really don't want to do. Anyway, I think I'm just going to use this as a template, measure out a new piece of blue line, and see about putting these fittings back in place with the new ones, and I'll be ready to go. Okay, so back on the back here, you've got this elbow that comes with it. It already has sealant on it. So the thing here is you want to make sure that it's above horizontal. So like when I stand this up, I think you can see how that angles up a little bit, and I might even add a little bit more to it. The deal is you don't want fuel to be draining away from this supply line. You want it to be going toward the supply. So anyway, this needs to be up, and the fuel line will kind of come down over the top of the tank and down to this like that. Over here on the other side, we've got 2 fittings. The one down here on the bottom is a return to the tank. So I know it's labeled somewhere, but I'm not seeing the label. Anyway, I know that's what that is. And then this one up here is your supply to the engine. So I went ahead and temporarily put this fitting on here. So this is just a push lock. So basically the rubber line just pushes on here nice and easy, and it's a good seal. So I can go ahead and tighten this down and then just push the line on when I get there. I went ahead and cut the new supply line just a little bit long, so that way I've got plenty of extra. I can always cut some off if I need to. And I also went ahead and put the fitting on the engine. So for this particular Cummins, let me show you. Let's see if you can see down in there. So hopefully, right down here where my finger is, that's the fuel injection pump, the high pressure pump. So this one has a fitting on it. Now I had to buy this elbow separately. It didn't actually connect to my engine, so I had to get this when I put the first pump in. But since I'm using the same setup, I can just reuse my elbow. Anyway, this flare fitting is the right one for the new line, and the way this thing goes over the frame rail, so I think most of these pumps are kind of designed to be up inside the frame, but with my truck being what it is, with my fuel tank being where it is, I have to put it on the outside. And what I found was, with it being out here, that fuel line, that supply to the engine, has to kind of run up between the body and the frame rail, which gets a little tight in a couple of places. So it doesn't actually fit if you leave the fittings on here and then try to fish the thing through. So it's easier, put the line in first, get it roughly in position, and then push fit your lines after you're in place. So anyway, looking at this up in here now, what we have, this is our supply from the tank. So this one comes down from the new sump. Well, it's not really a sump, it's just a pickup. But anyway, that's up in there. So this is in position. It'll attach to the supply on the pump. This one over here is my return to the tank. So this one kind of fits up in here, and you can see these will allow some movement even after they're in place. I went ahead and put this on the first time I did it just to help protect the line from where it kind of goes over a rough spot up here. And then my supply will obviously come in as well. So I've got 3 power connections up here. 2 of them are for the heaters, and then 1 is for the pump itself. So I just need to make sure I know which ones are which. One of these, the one supplying the pump, comes from the primary batteries up front, and then I've got a set of auxiliary batteries right here in the side compartment that I'm using to supply power to extra stuff like these heaters. So one of these harnesses goes up into this compartment, and that's the one I don't need right now. The other one goes to the front. That's the one I do need. Well, I think we're ready to try bolting this in place. So again, here's our new pump. That bracket needs to attach to that bracket that you can see right there at the top of the field. So here's your return line, there's your supply, and then this one sticking down here that's definitely long is to the engine. So I'm ready to go as far as plumbing's concerned. If you are putting this in from scratch, I would definitely recommend put in all your lines first and just leave them here unterminated, and then when you put your pump in, you can do final termination and make sure everything's the right length and the right shape. As far as electrical, I was able to trace these back. These 2 here are for the heaters, so I'm going to leave them alone, and that one back there in the back is the one that powers the pump. So I know the wiring harness works, so I'm just going to reuse the one I have instead of trying to place a new one. I do have the new harness, and at some point in the future, especially when I plan on taking this bed off, I'll probably go ahead and swap out the wiring at that time. Might as well make it new. But anyway, right now, get it on the road. I do want to mention that FASS does a really good job with the hardware. No, I'm not sponsored in any way. I kind of wish I was. These are expensive parts. But they've got a complete hardware kit that comes with this setup, and if I was using their bracket, they'd have everything you need to attach it. So you got a couple of these little rubber blocks. These are designed to go in between things. So like right there. In fact, now that I look at this, that's not going to work for my application, I don't think. But we'll give it a try. Anyway, these are sized for their bracket, not for this one. And you've got washers, you've got flange nuts that do have a knurl on the back of them, so they will lock a little bit against the metal. And then you've got grade 8 hardware to mount it in. Obviously, you already saw the mounts that are holding the pump in place. So it's really a good setup. I would say, as far as mating it up to this particular skid plate, it works really nicely, but I have noticed a couple of things. So over here, I think you can see the black one closest to the skid plate is my plumbing for the heater system. So that one is pretty close. I'm going to have to take a look and see if that works the way I want it to. I still need to thread an adapter on there. If I was doing this right, I probably should have put the adapter on and made sure that the flange on that had a flat side toward the skid plate. It would probably fit just fine in that case. But as this stands, we'll see. I might have to loosen things up in order to tighten that in there and then put it back together again. But that's okay. I don't need this right away. It's middle of summer or getting there, so it's going to be a while before I've got cold weather to deal with. Alright, let's get her mounted. So I want to mention to you that there's a lot of adjustment in these brackets. So this piece that I'm reusing is on a slider up on the body mount. You can see the bolt right up there in between those pieces of metal. I'm trying not to loosen that if I can. So I'm trying to reuse what I have, but because of the type of bracket that I'm attaching to it, this one has more space involved between the pump and that bracket, so I needed to push that back. So what I did, I just used a large crescent wrench, just this one here, and put it on the bottom of the metal here, like that. Basically slid that up on there and then just pushed on it to get that to bend backwards. So you shouldn't normally have to do that, and if you're putting this on from stock, you're not going to have to worry about it. But in my case, like I said, I'm trying to get it on there without doing a lot of extra work. So this will work, and it'll keep it far enough away from my utility boxes. Remember also that if you're running this on a regular truck bed, I think there's more space between the sheet metal and the frame. So you shouldn't have to worry about this at all if it's a regular truck bed. Well, I think we got it, or at least we're ready to try starting it. So over here, there's our supply line from the tank connected. Over on this side, on top is our supply to the engine, and down underneath is our return to the tank. Definitely be careful when you're threading these on. I think I might have started cross-threading that bottom fitting. Hopefully it went on okay. It did eventually tighten up. So here we've got the two leftover wiring harnesses. These are for the electric heaters that will go into this position, and there's one over here. I'm just not putting them in right now, but I do have them. I'm going to be reinstalling them into this system. I also have some electric heater tape that's going to wrap around each filter that I can install. I'll probably put those on a plug of some kind so I can pull the harness back up inside in the summertime, just so it's not out there all the time. Anyway, everything's tight, everything's on. We're pretty solid here. I've got everything connected up front. I've got a new fuel line in place. I should have the leak fixed, and hopefully this pump draws fuel. So I think I'm ready to try priming it and see if the engine starts. So when you're ready to prime an engine, just go ahead and turn this key on. Make sure you're in neutral. We're not going to start it. Just turn the key on. Pump's running. Make sure that's turned off. I don't need that. I'm going to cycle it a couple more times. Okay, well, the moral of the story, if you can't get a fuel pump to prime and it's a brand new pump, 9 times out of 10 there's a problem with your suction line. So the process for priming one of these pumps, what you're supposed to do is leave it empty, connect everything, go ahead and cycle the pump and get it to where it stays on for a little while. So in my Dodge, I needed to bump the starter in order to get it to stay on. And then what they tell you to do is come down here and loosen the output side filter. And that's supposed to take the pressure off, which then allows this to draw suction on the tank and draw fuel into the system. Well, I tried that several times, it just wasn't working. So I went ahead and changed my plan, and instead I pre-filled this filter. So the water separating filter, that's the suction side of the pump. And I could get the engine to start. It ran okay for a little while and then it died, which is the same thing it was doing with the last pump on it. So I did some checking to see what other options I had, and people online were saying try applying pressure inside the tank. So like put an air line into the fuel filler to provide positive pressure, which will then provide a force to push fuel up into the suction line here. I didn't have the equipment to try that, so instead I tried using this siphon pump in reverse. So I basically just put this in a fuel can, stuck the end of it up here in this suction line, just like so, and went ahead and started pushing fuel through the other way. And what I noticed was there was fuel leaking from above, and obviously that's not supposed to happen. So what I've decided is I've got another dry rotted line up there, so I need to take this one off. Unfortunately, that means I do have to drop the tank. I don't have room up between the bed and the tank to get in there with a wrench, so I've ordered a 7/8 stubby wrench to see if I can maybe make that work, but if I can't, then I'm going to have to lower the tank. Now, it's not terribly complicated to do. Mainly what it comes down to, you have to remove the filler and the vent. So if we get up in here, I don't know if you can even see it. Let's see here. Yeah, so right up in there are the filler and the vent lines. Those have to be disconnected. There's a wiring harness attached to the top of the top of the tank that provides the signal for the fuel gauge, and it also gives some information to the fuel pump system. So in this case, my wiring harness for the pump is connected to that. And then obviously you've got the 2 fuel lines for the FASS system. So I don't have the original little hard lines that were attached to that tank in the beginning, so I don't have to worry about those. But I still would really rather not drop the tank, so I'm going to see what I can do. If I can get a stubby wrench up on that flare fitting, I might be able to make this work. I'm going to replace the suction line. I probably need to replace the other one too, darn it. But if that's what it comes down to, that's what it comes down to. We'll see what we can do. Alright, I think I finally got what I need. This is a 7/8 stubby wrench. I'm going to see if I can reach up over the top of this fuel tank and actually get a hold of the fittings up there. And I've also got this adapter. This is just like one of the others I had. This should allow me to finish up the cooling system attachment for this. So let's give it a try. Well, I think I have some unplanned good news. So remember when I was talking earlier about having purchased some extra fittings because I didn't know what size I needed for attaching the coolant lines to this? Well, I had purchased these guys. These are a larger pipe thread. And as it turns out, the newer versions of this pump have a different kind of fuel block or sending unit than the older ones do. So the original one, I need to replace this line. This is my supply line from the tank. But this is the original fitting, so it was an NPT male on the end of this push connector instead of all the standard flares that everything else comes with. So what I got, I had that fitting, and all of my new ones are female flare. Now I suppose I could try to cut this off of here and reuse that fitting. It looks like it's in good enough condition, but I think I can make this easier. So these guys are 1/2 inch NPT to, oh man, I'm trying to remember the flare that this goes to, but anyway, it's the flare that comes with this kit. So as it turns out, these flare fittings that this came with a lot of will fit right on the end of this black one. And I just checked, and this will thread into the original sending unit that I've got on top of the tank. So I think I saved myself some work because I've got 2 of these. Here's the other one. So this way I can put these back into position and replace the original lines going to and from the fuel tank. So, man, dodged a bullet on that one. Okay, I did the same thing with this fuel return line to the tank. So this one comes out of this little L connector out here that you can see I put the new one on. And it goes back into the other side of the sending unit for the tank. So this one is a new flare fitting, and then I've got another adapter up on top of the tank for the return. I think it's going to work out okay. What I did find out though, I had all of this plumbing for my coolant attachment set up right back here, right where it goes, and unfortunately these are all way too close together. So the flare fitting for the return line and the flare fitting for the coolant line interfere with each other to the point where you can't get them both on at the same time. So what I found out, I'm going to have to go with a smaller flare set in order to make this work. Now it's possible, man, if I could have done it, in fact I might even consider it. So this fitting, let me see if I can show you what I'm looking at. This fitting right here just has an O-ring on behind it, and actually when I tried to take this old one off, this came out with it. So I can take that off easily enough, and it might be possible with that out of there to go ahead and put an elbow fitting on that comes down. And then I might be able to attach my coolant line down low. Let me see if I can maybe make that work. Okay, theoretically speaking, I think we're reconnected. So I'm foregoing the cooling system attachment for now. I'll put this in later, but I'm probably gonna have to take the pump off of that bracket in order to get the fittings in place. Anyway, there's the return line going back to the fuel tank, the one on the bottom here. The supply line going to the engine is up on top. And then over here we have our supply from the tank. Now I know I bought that black braided line to replace all this stuff with, but I figured in this case it made more sense to just go ahead and get it on the road. I'll go ahead and swap out for the better line later on. But I'm going to make another attempt at bleeding this and see if I can get it to run. So what I have right now, both filters are in place and tight, so I'm going to kick the engine over, get this started, or at least get the priming process started, then come down here and loosen up the secondary filter, the main filter over here on this side, and we'll see if we can get it to start. Well, I think that worked. Sorry I didn't get you down here fast enough to see it, but I got down here, got this front filter loose, and then almost immediately it started dropping fuel out the top. So I definitely had air leaks in that damaged supply line. Everything should be tight now. I'm not noticing any problems up top here. Looks good, looks good. I think we're okay. Let's get it started. Okay, man, I really hope I got enough battery juice for this. Nope. Alright, got the charger hooked up. Let's see what we can do. That's promising. Pump's running. Got no leaks. No leaks in the fuel line. There's my fitting down there. It looks good. Alright, let's back this down off the jump. Yeah, I know, you're not supposed to have multiple charging sources on a battery set at the same time. That's okay. Just gonna let this run for a little bit, see if I can clear up the engine some. Good. Running pretty even. I like it. Looks like I am going to need some new tires though. Some of these are getting a little dry rotted. Leaking. That's a good sign. Man, she's rusty up under here. We're okay. Got no coolant leaks. Everything appears tight up here. I'm gonna have to see if I can refill the cooling system though. I know it's going to be a little low. Well, she's definitely pulling fuel from the tank now. Because the last few times, I know you saw it in previous videos and this one, when it was just pulling from the water separator, it would have died by now. So I think we're doing okay. Yeah, no signs of any fuel coming down off the tank. no leaks. All right. Well, I think we got it. So for now, that's as far as I'm going to go. I'll deal with the coolant system a little bit later. And I still need to put some tie wraps on these fuel lines, make sure to hold them in place. But I think we're good. We've got a good response. Let's see how she sounds. Sounds good. All right, oil pressure looking good. Yeah, I think we're getting there. Yep, that'll work. I can use that for a little while. So, I'm going to finish putting things back together here, and I'll see you over the next horizon.